Crocoin has had a very impressive performance over the past year, up just under 65%. It sits above a key area of support at the 10 cents level, and the Cronos chain just smashed a record for daily transactions, going from about 75,000 in early December up to 2.7 million as of December 13th. Now, in response to this massive spike in transactions, we have now seen an upgraded version of the Cronos chain launched by the team, which is being called the Cronos ZKEVM testnet. You can expect to hear about all of this and more in today's episode of the Everything Crypto Show. Now, before we hop into the content, just a friendly reminder that I am not a financial advisor, nor do I offer any sort of financial advice on YouTube. I'm simply here for your crypto news and entertainment purposes. And if you do find these videos informative and or entertaining, please consider hitting that sub button, hitting that like button, and turning the notification bell on so you can be notified when all of my latest videos drop, which generally come out at about noontime EST on a daily basis. So with that, we're going to hop right into today's content, and there is a lot to cover when it comes to Crocoin and the Cronos chain today. And this kind of started a couple of days back here when it was reported by this Twitter account that Cronos is currently experiencing a flood attack. Someone sending hundreds of zero CRO transactions, and the chain is struggling to produce new blocks. So really, the simplest way to phrase it is that the blockchain experienced a massive spike in transactions, and therefore transactions were going through slower, just simply due to the congestion on the Cronos chain. And it was a significant spike in transactions. However, it actually was not a flood attack on the Cronos chain. Further research showed that it was basically a project similar to Ordinals minting thousands of inscriptions on Cronos, putting a lot of stress on the network. So we saw that when Ordinals were kind of blowing up on the Bitcoin blockchain, it drove transaction fees to the upside. And basically the exact same thing here happened with the Cronos chain. We've seen it on the Solana chain as well, on the Avalanche chain. People basically doing these inscriptions and driving the gas fees up the wall. So you can take a look at just how significant this spike was in transactions, okay? I mean, we can see here, right? Like on Wednesday, December 12th, so the day before this kind of like flood of inscriptions hit the market. Okay, we can actually look at the 11th. So on the 11th, Cronos did 72,000 transactions. On the 12th, it did 1.5 million total transactions. And on the 13th, it did 2.7 million transactions on Cronos. And yeah, this high volume was significant, okay? We actually saw VVS Finance, the largest DEX on the Cronos chain, say we are currently experiencing intermittent delays due to an extremely high volume of transactions on the blockchain. Rest assured, your funds are safe. Liquidity pool rewards remain unaffected and continue to be earned. We are actively working to resolve the issue. Similarly, Fulcrum Finance, the largest perpetual exchange on the Cronos chain, they said here that RPCs were down earlier due to unusual high transactions with inscriptions, affecting our service temporarily. We are back and users can now perform trading as usual. Our team will continue to monitor closely. So after this brief window where the Cronos chain was struggling to produce new blocks because of this massive spike in transactions, it was pretty much back to business as per usual for the Cronos chain. And we can definitely see that it was inscriptions here, right? Because if we actually take a look at active Cronos addresses, it has gone up, but not as rapidly as the transaction rise went up. And similarly, the CRC20 daily token transfer chart, which is basically the transfer of tokens via the Cronos chain, these were not spiking either, which means it was not token transfers that was actually causing this massive spike. It was, in fact, inscriptions. Now, I was going to make this video yesterday, and I'm happy I didn't, because the big question that I was going to kind of bring to attention was, what are we going to do then if we are expecting the Cronos chain to see this mass adoption? If we do want the Cronos chain to process millions of transactions per day, how can we possibly do that if it's kind of, failing to produce or just very slowly producing blocks? And looking at this initial spike, how can there be potentially millions of transactions on this chain in the future? And a great example here is the BNB chain, okay? yesterday, I mean, this also saw a massive spike in transactions. So I think inscriptions are just kind of going, everywhere right now. People are just kind of making inscriptions on a ton of different chains. So it saw a spike here of, up to over 30 million transactions. However, we can even take a look at what BNB does here on a normal day, and that ranges between like 2 to 3 million. Okay, so what what the Binance Smart Chain is doing down here, the Cronos chain is doing all the way up here, as it is, basically having a very difficult time producing blocks. And, it's not like a secret. We've spoken about it for a while. The Binance Smart Chain is far ahead of the Cronos chain. I mean, in terms of TVL, it's got about 4.308 billion locked up, while Cronos has about 381 mil. So about 90% less actually locked up on this chain than the Binance Smart Chain has. But that is also fairly reflected in the market cap, okay? The BNB token rather, comes in with a 38.5 billion market cap. And if we take a look at Cronos here, I believe we're coming in at 2.58 billion. So also about a 90% reduction in terms of the valuation. So that's not a concern. In my opinion, I mean, this does basically add up that, Cronos and BNB are kind of valued according, not exactly according to their TVL, but if you look at their TVL and their market cap, it does kind of make sense. So that was kind of the next concern I had, was how can we actually see mass adoption for the Cronos chain if it is struggling when it finally sees over 1 million transactions for the first time since its launch. And we actually saw the Cronos team launch this news yesterday, which I am reporting on as of the day of this, as of December 14th, I'm reporting on this. This will go live. You'll be watching it on the Friday. But we can see here that they announced Cronos Labs launches public ZKEVM testnet using ZK Sync's Zero Knowledge Stack technology. So essentially, this is not the Cronos chain. This is in fact a third blockchain that will be introduced to the Crocoin ecosystem. And this is going to be the ZKEVM testnet, a zero-knowledge roll-up blockchain network that represents a significant milestone on Cronos' journey towards scalability and mainstream adoption. And we have a lot of teams working on this, the engineering teams from Crypto.com, VVS Finance, Fulcrum Finance, and Vano Finance. With an addressable user base of more than 80 million crypto holders around the world, Cronos is on a mission to make it easy and safe for the next billion crypto users to adopt self-custodial, Web3, DeFi, NFTs, and GameFi. So Ken Timsit here, the managing director of Cronos Labs, says the Cronos ecosystem already includes a top 10 blockchain by TVL. We'll talk about that later in the video. A top 5 Cosmos network by staked amount, a top 30 cryptocurrency. Is that still the case? I think it is. Oh, it's 31 now. Close enough, though. So a top 30 cryptocurrency by market cap. And a major EVM-compatible app ecosystem with more than 500 projects. The Cronos ZKEVM testnet represents an opportunity for Cronos Labs and their partners to prepare for the next phase of growth starting in 2024. Other Cronos apps are warmly invited to join the testnet. So he says here, when we introduced the ZK stack, we opened up the door for anyone wanting to build on top of Ethereum to do so by deploying hyperchains. Whether you're building a specialized rollup or a general purpose one, hyperchains allow you to tap into Ethereum's extensive user base and liquidity while preserving its robust security and decentralization. And you definitely do want to be tapping into Ethereum. Just the TVL on this chain. You can see here, right? Like Ether actually makes up 64.8% of all total value locked on DeFi, commanding 60.95 billion US dollars locked up on this chain. Compare that to Tron in second place with 8.269 bill, and you can clearly see why Ether is the king of DeFi, right? So kind of important you're there talking about the fact that this will allow them to tap into Ethereum's user base, liquidity, as well as security and decentralization. So the Cronos ZKEVM is a zero-knowledge layer to roll up on top of the Ethereum Sepolia testnet, meaning it is secured by the ETH testnet both from a final settlement and a data availability standpoint, and it's using T-Crow, a testnet version of the Crow cryptocurrency, as its native token to pay for transactions. And, hopefully once they are kind of done in this testnet phase, this will go to the mainnet. And I do think that is the intention. I hope that They can get this out in decent time here to kind of prepare for onboarding the next wave of crypto users, but definitely not something I want them to rush. I want them to take their time with this and make sure that it is a smooth launch. So earlier in 2023, Cronos announced significant performance improvements of the flagship Cronos network. They also announced the commercial availability of application-specific optimistic roll-up networks on top of Cronos, thanks to a partnership with Caldera. And in October 2023, the Crypto.org chain implemented rebranding into the Cronos POS chain. So the Cronos POS chain, this was formerly the Crypto.org chain, and this is basically where you go to actually stake all your CRO for a nice 7.5% yield. And I do think it's also kind of important to factor in this chain when you look at the TVL in the CRO coin ecosystem, because it has about 6.688 billion CRO locked up, which actually makes it even bigger than Cronos in terms of CRO actually delegated and validators running this chain. So the Cronos ecosystem is now multi-chain across several networks in order to support a broad range of user needs and cases. So here is Cronos, the EVM blockchain. Here is the Cronos POS chain, secured by a vast network of more than 100 nodes. And yeah, this 6.68 billion CRO is worth more than 600 mil USD in staked value, in the top 5 of all Cosmos chains, and securely validated around 35 mil transactions with an average fee of $0.00001 US dollars, so very cheap and cost effective. And now the Cronos ZKEVM, which aims to extend the rich portfolio of Cronos apps into the promising ZK Sync hyperchain ecosystem in order to further broaden its user base and make it easier to move liquidity back and forth between Ethereum and the Cronos chain. They kind of just continue on talking about ZK Sync. And yeah, to be honest, I do think this is a very good idea for the Cronos chain. I'm sure they must have been working on this before we actually saw this flood of transactions, but definitely a very timely announcement, in my opinion, in response to what we actually saw go down here on the charts. So to wrap things up, I do want to take a look at the actual CROcoin chart here, mainly because even based on this news, we have not really seen a big move for CROcoin. Let me go ahead and put us on a 1 year over here. And actually, let's just go look at the 3 month, because we're going to take a look at this here. You can see that based on the news, right, like CROcoin didn't actually see any sort of significant move to the upside. The significant move for CROcoin came back here in mid-October when we were talking about it at that 5-cent range. It ran all the way up to 12.5 cents, kind of cooled off here. And the one thing I have been eyeing when it comes to CROcoin is that 10-cent area of support. You can see here, right, like 10 cents is a super important area for the price action, and we've spoken about why in previous videos. But essentially, if we go to even the 5-year, go to a log scale so it's easier to see. I mean, you can see here, right, like 10 cents acted as support before we saw that massive run from 10 cents all the way up to that 95-cent area. We also saw 10 cents once again act as some support here in the bear market until we broke down, and that's why it was not super surprising to see over here that 10 cents was acting as a strong area of resistance. However, CROcoin now actually broke above it. It is kind of testing it as support, and I am watching to see what it does at this very important area of price action. So on that note, I hope you did enjoy the content in today's video. I hope you are all staying happy, safe, and healthy, and I hope to catch you in the next one. Peace out for now.